WICU and its partners are proud to bring you Erie's Greatest Generation Remembers.
Downtown, there was a pool place. That's when it come on the radio, Pearl Harbor. I joined the service with my buddy. We went in the Army, 1942 May. We went to basic training down at Fort Knox. I met a guy from Erie there, Edward Joint. And people were saying, well, I'm from Chicago. And somebody said Erie, Pennsylvania. And you know, that's like slapping me in the face. There's nobody but me from Erie, you know. And we introduced each other, and we became friends. See, when we were flying there, we could hear the bullets hitting the airplane. That must have been machine guns there. And the plane that in front of us got hit by ACAC stuff and hit one motor and that. And then we were flying low to get in the ground when you jump. And they were low, and when they got hit, and it didn't take them long, and boom, they hit. They got shot down. 18 paratroopers and him, and they all got killed right in front of me. Burnt right there. Well, the biggest thing was the jump itself. It was a night jump. And it was jumping on Germans. And they had guns shooting at us. You didn't know where you was, or who was there, or what was there. The only thing that saved us, remember them clickets in a popcorn box or whatever? We had one of them. If you was walking or somebody and you heard something to stop and you gave him a click, he better give you 2 clicks or he's dead. A lot of guys lost their clicks, so it was hard at night. My buddy and I went in a hole in a ditch lake and covered ourselves with leaves. And we stayed there until late daytime so we could know what we were doing. You know, we could hear the Germans walking and everything. There was just 2 of us together, and that you can't do too much with just 2 guys, you know. Dick Winters and his other paratroopers went up and knocked them 4 guns off. And they killed 50 Krauts, 13 paratroopers. They knocked all them big guns off that had been shooting down on the 4th Division. When they come in, they'd have slaughtered them more than they did. But he got a DSC for that. Mr. Winters did. He was quite a soldier. We got up in the morning and we had little maps they gave us. And we were looking at a map at a crossroad, and we didn't know up on the hill there was a German outfit had a mortar outfit. And that mortar shell hit about 6 feet in front of us. Eddie Joint was with me always, this kid from Erie. He got covered and he laid down on me, and I didn't know if he was alive or if I was hurt or what. And finally he looked up and he said, "You hurt?" No, he says, "Let's get out of here." So we got up and running. We went over there, and there was a building over there, and there was a bunch of troopers there. They had a bunch of paratroopers wounded there, and they were watching these crows cross road. For some reason or other, they put me on a machine gun. I was there on a machine gun all day, watching from the beaches. We didn't know what was coming up or what, you know. Until that evening, I seen somebody moving, and I told her to the sergeant or something. I said, "It's coming." So he come down and looked. It was a guy from the division coming up from the beaches, American. I took the gun and I took it off of ammunition. Yeah, that was very nice. The 4th Division come up and hit us, you know. We took Eindhoven. We jumped on Eindhoven, Holland. It's a big town. This Erie we took that day, the paratroopers. They knew some guys were trying to sneak out with a car, Germans, and they were Air Force people. I think we killed one and captured 4, I'm not sure. We got in the car, and they put me on a fender with a gun and made them walk in front of us, and we walked around down to the town. That's a boy, Bernard, you know, I'm a big hero for doing nothing, you know. But that was part of the war. I think it was Holland. We went through a field. This guy jumped off, an officer, German paratrooper officer with a Schmeiser machine pistol, and he'd have opened up, he'd have killed half of us. But he knew better because he was going to get killed. So he dropped his gun and we captured him. He was a major paratrooper, German. I remember that. That was close. And close don't count, you know. And we hit a bunch of SS troopers. We just about got killed there, Eddie, a guy. They shot right between us and machine gun, and very lucky it was between our legs and the ground there, you know. And they come up, the sergeant down, "Hey, you guys better get out of here." So I got up and we got out of there and gonna go run in that field. And they had that field zeroed in with mortars. And they started dropping them, you know, and everybody naturally, you fall down. Winter's coming out. You can't lay down, get up and get out of here. Mortar shell come down, killed my buddy. I was very lucky that I didn't get blown up like he did, you know. We had a good outfit. We had a young, well-educated combat outfit.
When the news came that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, I couldn't believe that this was happening. No, I wasn't scared. I was amazed that they would even attempt something like this. And very shortly afterwards, I got drafted in the Army, and we went to a place called Camp Edwards. And then, unbeknown to us, we were getting ready for the invasion. Now, I was with General Patton on Normandy, and from there we went all the way up through Germany. And when the war was over, we waited 2.5 weeks for the Russians to come and take Berlin. You know, when we saw these people, you can't believe that a human being could treat each other the way we saw them treat these people. They weighed, I'll bet some of those people weighed maybe 80 pounds, 85 pounds. They starved them. We said they were, and there were big ditches. And they would line the people up next to them and shoot them, and they would fall down in the ditches. And when you went through there, you could see that there was probably 400 or 500 just in this one camp. and they starved them to death. They got out to view all the dead people in the ditches, and General Patton turned around, and he couldn't watch, he couldn't look at it. It was too gross for him to see. And that's what infuriated him, to think that we are going to let them get away with this. He couldn't believe what he saw. During the Battle of the Bulge, the Germans, that was their big moment, because they were going to divide the Allies. It was so cold. We didn't have the right clothing, and that was in the middle of winter when the Battle of the Bulge occurred, and we got frostbitten. The Germans figured this was our moment that we can get them, and they tried awful hard. Our Air Corps was wonderful. They helped us out, because without the Air Corps, I don't know what we would have done. You talk about being scared, my God. People don't know what fright is until they was as scared as I was. And General Patton traveled so fast, they couldn't keep up with us. I remember one time there was a big push, and the rest of the chiefs said, "We can't do that." And General Patton just, "My boys can do it." And we did. The hedgerows were actually homes built right in the hedgerows. The Germans had built, and they would pop up and fight and go back in the hedgerows again. And that was devastating for us, because I can tell you that I've never seen a hedgerow until I saw those hedgerows in France. They were terrible, and the Germans had them all equipped with good ammunition, plenty of guns, and we were lucky. We were advancing a place called Fontenoy, France, and the bridge blew up, and we fell 49 feet down the railroad tracks. I was driving this truck across, and Tim was killed, 2 others were killed, and I don't remember because they took us to the hospital. Tim was in the back of the truck, as were 6 other people who were part of our crew that ran it. I was with a 40mm gun crew, and behind our truck we pulled a big gun, the 40mm gun. What happened when the bridge blew up, we fell down into the railroad track, and if it weren't for some railroad men who were working at the time, they got us out of the truck, or we'd have never made it. My son Tim was named after my buddy that was killed next to me. His name was Timothy, and I vowed to myself that if I ever got through this, and I was ever married and had a boy, his name would be Tim, and sure enough, we were in Germany, and somebody shouted that, "It's over, it's over." I said, "What's over?" "The war's over, the war's over." And that was when we were told that the war was over with and that Germany was done. I shook. I was shaken. I can't really tell you my true feeling. It was to think that we weren't going to be killed, and that the war was over, and that we would come home. And it was hard to believe that we made it. Because, you know, to begin with, when we were coming through Germany, nobody ever thought we'd come home. Because there was so much death, and we went through the concentration camp and liberated that. But if they could do that, what would they do with us? I mean, because they were a long way from being normal people. We captured one SS troop, and they interrogated him, and they asked him, "Why did you people do this?" And he stood right up real straight, and he said, "Wouldn't you like to play God just once?" And that was his remark. And with a remark like that, you know that they aren't normal people. There were times that things were happening, today or tomorrow, that guy got killed, that guy was killed, that guy. And then we would say to ourselves, when is our turn? Nobody ever said, when I get home. In fact, they evaded that question of when I get home. My little sister, she was 8 years old, and when I come home, she said, "Vinny, Mama prayed every night. Every night she prayed that you and Carl," that's my brother, "come home." And then she never stopped praying. And to this day, it was Mama's prayers that brought us home, you know. War is hell. And for anybody that has to go to war and give up their whole life, and I can tell you one thing, I was proud to serve my country. I was proud to go to war because it was our turn. Somebody had to fight for this country, and I'm glad that I was part of it. Our country is worth fighting for. Without people like us and generations after us, if we don't protect it, somebody else will take it.
My family came to Erie during the war. I was raised by my maternal grandfather and my mother, and my maternal grandfather had served in World War I and had retired from the Navy Reserve in 1938, but he was recalled to active duty when he was 68 years old. And he was sent to Erie to be a naval advisor to the War Production Board. You know, as just a citizen, you know, I can remember the blackout curtains on our windows. The air raid warden coming around with his white helmet on, telling us, you know, there's a window that isn't covered or something of that sort. The sirens would go off, telling you there was a mock air raid to train people to be used to that sort of thing. As we would say in the Navy, World War II was an all-hands evolution. Everybody was involved, including school kids like myself, whether it was in a scrap drive or whatever. In fact, I can remember learning the silhouettes of enemy planes. Now, we didn't expect any enemy planes over Erie, but we were trained. There was a German prisoner of war camp up in Fort Niagara, New York, just past Buffalo, at the old fort that was there in the 1700s. And during the winter of 1944, which is on record one of the severest winters we've ever had, they brought truckloads of prisoners down to Erie to help shovel out the parking lots of plants, particularly GE. And it happened that one of the guards for that, one of those trucks, was an old friend of ours from Buffalo. And so this Army truck pulled up in front of our house on 6th Street. There were German prisoners in the back of it, and he came in to see us and had a cup of coffee. And he was a guard for them because he spoke fluent German. But people just don't realize that we utilized prisoners like that during the war. Well, I think my decision to go into the military was really shaped by my grandfather, who swore me in when I became an ensign in the Navy. He not only swore me in, but he gave me the sword that he was given when he was commissioned in 1909. And I used that sword for ceremonial purposes the whole 30 years I was connected with the Navy. Bill Hurt, the son of our founder here at Erie Insurance, and who was a longtime CEO here, he joined the Navy when he was 17 and went into what was called then the Navy V-12 program. It was an officer training program that sent them to college to give them a very concentrated college training program and then commissioned them. He was commissioned when he was 19 years old and then went to the Pacific just as the war ended. He used to like to say that by the time he got to Hawaii, the Japanese knew he was coming and they surrendered. But that was a joke, of course, but he was fortunate that he didn't have to get into the fighting, but he did go to occupied Japan right after the surrender. He was in Japan. The surrender took place in September of '45, and he was there in October '45, doing shore duty, shore patrol duty on the mainland. There were a number of people from Erie that obviously some served in the Band of Brothers unit, and others, a number of them were at D-Day in Normandy. I remember one in particular, Sandy MacIver, who was a longtime official at the courthouse. And he obviously had been crippled in the war. I think he was a young lieutenant at Omaha Beach and was left for dead. And they started to cart him away as being dead, I guess, and he was alive and survived with grievous injuries. But that's just one of many such stories. The 28th Infantry Division of the Pennsylvania National Guard, which is the oldest continuous serving division in the United States Army, was heavily engaged in the European campaign, and particularly in the Hürtgen Forest in Germany. It was a real slaughter there, and it was wintertime. And it was so bad, and bodies were being left around, that a truce was negotiated between the Germans and the Americans to allow corpsmen and others to go in and take out the dead and the wounded back to their lines. And at this ceremony in the State Capitol building, they dedicated a painting of the scene in the Hürtgen Forest. And one of the speakers was a German doctor who was there at that time, and he, as a physician, of course, had to treat anyone, whether German or American, and he talked about treating American soldiers and German soldiers and the interchange between the two forces that were, after the few hours that they had the truce, then they went back to killing each other again. It was a very touching and moving experience. Well, I think it's very important that they hear what went on, the ravages of war, and why we really shouldn't have more wars. In particular, when I think of Europe, and I think of the Holocaust, the concentration camps, our troops were witness to that. They liberated many, many of them. And they know what man can do to themselves. And I think that is a lasting lesson that they can pass on to us, those veterans that experienced that. Not just the Holocaust survivors of those camps, but those that went there and liberated those folks can pass on that atrocity to us, and how that hopefully it will never happen again. But sometimes history does repeat itself, unfortunately.
WICU and its partners are proud to bring you Erie's Greatest Generation Remembers.